It was once a city whose heart beat within the fog. London, a realm of cobblestones and gaslight, where the nights seemed longer than the days and the shadows weighed heavier than the morning light. Above the rooftops stretched a sky so grey that even the stars could not pierce it. There, in the narrow alleys of Whitechapel, people lived pressed close together, yet lonely in their fates. The breath of horses mingled with the cries of street vendors, the clatter of bottles, the whispers of thieves, the sighs of the weary, and the fog lay upon it all like a cloak, guarding secrets and swallowing screams. In this world, poverty was a constant companion, and hunger walked hand in hand with despair. Children played in the dirt while mothers counted their last coin. Men sought forgetfulness in drink. Women searched in dark corners for a piece of bread or a fleeting shelter. The city was alive, yet its breath tasted bitter. And when night descended, when the lanterns cast their dim light upon the stones, Whitechapel changed. Alleys turned into labyrinths, shadows into creatures, and every echo of footsteps could be the last sound one ever heard. The people told each other stories to tame their fear, of ghosts that watched over graveyards, of demons lurking within the walls, and of figures whose names were better left unspoken. But most of all, they feared the nameless horror that drifted through the streets like an untouchable shadow. No one knew from which corner he came. No one could say which face he wore. And so they gave him a name, as people do with monsters in fairy tales. A name that rang through the night like a curse, Jack the Ripper. And so began a tale that was no fairy tale, a story of fear, born in the heart of the fog, carried by the darkness of a city that never found rest. It was said the shadow was a man. Others whispered he was a ghost, born from the fog itself, and some believed he was both at once half flesh, half curse. They gave him a name, as people do with monsters in fairy tales. But even with this name, he remained untouchable. Like smoke in the night, he was Jack the Ripper. The reaper of fates, the severer of lives. No one could describe his face. Some swore they had seen his eyes glimmer in the dark, cold and merciless as steel. Others claimed he wore a coat that devoured the light, and a blade sharper than the breath of winter. But only one thing was certain: wherever he walked, fear lingered like ash after a fire. His steps were silent, like the ticking of a clock announcing the end of a tale. No one heard him come, and yet all felt his presence. A chill that crawled across the skin, an unseen gaze pressing against the neck. Whitechapel seldom slept, but many awoke in those nights, not from noise but from silence. For silence was his companion. He came when the city was still, when even the rats seemed to freeze, as if they too had recognized his presence. Thus he grew into legend more than man. Children hardly dared to play alone, fearing the shadow might slip from an alley. Women glanced behind them thrice before entering a street. Men kept their voices low when they spoke of him, as if a single word might summon him. But Jack the Ripper was no demon of parchment and lore. He was real as the cold that seeped through the bricks of Whitechapel. His story was not written in books, but carved into the hearts of those who lived in dread. And like every monster in a fairy tale, he carried within him a promise. The promise that darker nights still lay ahead. In the heart of the fog lived 5 women, each carrying her own story, each a candle against the night. Their lives were hard, their days filled with hunger, and their voices often unheard. Yet still they burned flickering sparks in the endless grey of Whitechapel. The first flame dimmed in late summer, her light stolen beneath the veil of mist. Soon after, another candle was snuffed out, leaving the streets colder. Then a third, and a fourth, until the people of London whispered of a hand that moved unseen, extinguishing what little brightness the alleys still held. They were not queens nor noble ladies. They were daughters of hardship, bearing lives that society overlooked. But in this dark fable, they became more than forgotten souls. They became symbols, victims woven into the legend of the faceless reaper. The people did not speak their names as much as they should have. Fear twisted their memory into whispers, but for those who listened, the wind still carried them. Mary Ann, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, Mary Jane, each a star extinguished, each a story cut short. And as the candles faded, the darkness of Whitechapel grew deeper, until the entire city felt the chill of their absence. London rose in alarm. The shadows' footsteps had grown too loud to ignore, even if they remained unheard. Policemen marched through the streets, detectives drew their notes, and neighbors locked their doors with trembling hands. Yet the fog was his ally. It hid his movements, blurred his trail, and swallowed every clue. Witnesses saw shapes but not faces, movements but not truths. The city hunted a ghost, and the ghost smiled in silence. The alleys became battlefields of fear and hope. Men with lanterns scoured the darkness, yet the darkness always seemed one step ahead. Rumors spread faster than footsteps. Some swore he was a doctor, others a butcher, still others a foreigner cloaked in mystery. None were certain, none were safe, and so the tale twisted further. The hunt was no longer only for a man, but for an idea, for the monster that lurked behind every corner, for the shadow that turned every stranger into a suspect. Whitechapel became a labyrinth of suspicion, where trust dissolved and fear became law, but the Reaper remained unseen. His cloak was the night itself, and his face was the mask of the city's own nightmares. Fairy tales often close with the villain's fall, with justice served and peace restored. But this tale was written in another ink. The shadow was never caught. His true face was never shown. His name, though feared, remained only a whisper. And so the story lingered, unfinished. Generations passed, yet the legend lived on. Some told it as warning, some as myth, others as grim curiosity. The fog of Whitechapel lifted long ago, but the echo of those nights clings still to its stones. Jack the Ripper, no longer just a man, but a symbol of darkness that defies the light. His tale has no final page, no neat ending. It drifts like smoke, eternal and unresolved. And so it ends as it began, with a shadow in the mist and a name spoken only in whispers, a curse, a warning, a legend. Once upon a crime.